I appreciate this honor of being told that I was going to give a testimony when I got here. That given he has a unique way of getting things done. He didn't write and say, would you like to give a testimony? Or would you do it for it? He said, the subject of your testimony is. And I guess that's one of the best ways. That works with some people, it won't work with everybody. It sort of works with me. And I had some difficulty also with the subject that he told me to talk on. He said, testify concerning the effect that the truth of God has on your life. And I run that by several times. The effect of the truth of God on your life. I couldn't quite get a handle on that, but I'm assuming that he meant that when I first heard the gospel preached, how did it sit with me? And that was still difficult because I was born and raised in a Christian home, and I never really knew what it was like to hear the gospel for the first time. I grew up with it, you see. Now, there's some people that it does have a dramatic effect on, like some rank sinner that is burdened and loaded down with the guilt of sin. He hears the gospel preached and he responds to it with great joy, and he is relieved that his sins have been lifted from his soul. I didn't have that experience, but I did experience one thing later on that did have an effect on my soul, which I'll relate in just a minute. Now, this whole thing's right there, and let me mention that Dallas Burdett and I usually travel together at these sessions, and we use the occasion to discuss great doctrinal and theological points. We have a good time. It helps us to pass the miles. It makes them shorter, and the time passes faster. And not only that, Dallas is pursuing a doctorate in theology in a college there in Montgomery, Alabama, and I use these occasions to straighten him out on some of the things But while traveling back 2 years ago, back to Alabama, where I live, he lives in the middle part of Alabama, Montgomery. Dallas asked me a question, and I've been thinking about it a lot since then. He said, what do you think about negative preaching? What do you think about preaching the gospel of fear? Instilling this thing called fear into the hearts of those, causing them to respond to the gospel. I told him then that I didn't think a whole lot of that method of that approach to the gospel, but I said there must be something good about it. There's something that is right in instilling fear into the hearts, especially of the younger generations. And I related to him the story of my family, which I have never told before because I simply don't talk about my family even in preaching or in writing. But I thought it fit the occasion here. Now, I come from a family of 11 children, and I'm the youngest of 11 children, and most of us are still alive. I think I've lost 2 brothers and a sister. Well, I had one sister who died when she was 3 years old. But out of 10 of us who reached adulthood, all 10 of us are Christians, or have been, or will be, and still are. And I'm the youngest, so you can imagine how old some of the rest of us are. And they're still faithful to the Lord, and I'm confident that they will remain faithful until the end. Now, 10 out of 10, that's not bad, you know. I remember reading in a journal somewhere that someone had made a survey and said that out of a family of 3 children, 2 of them will be lost. At the time that I read that, I didn't believe it. I have since come to believe it. But at the time when I first read it, I thought of my own family, and I said, we are 10 children, and all of us are Christians. They're deacons, song leaders, elders, and teacher, or whatever, and even some of us try to preach. And I said, how come? Why is it that 10 of us remain faithful to the Lord, and 2 out of 3 on the average are lost to the Lord? So there's something that has got to account for that. And I think I know the reason. I don't know that you may enlighten me on this when you have the time, when we have the time. I remember that when I was about 6 years old, my mother called me and my nephew into the living room and sat us down in front of her. My nephew was just 1 year younger than me. And she told us the story of the Bible, or the story of Jesus, or in a negative way, the story of the gospel. And I don't know what word she used, but she was so graphic that she just scared the daylights out of both of us. In fact, she scared my nephew so bad he went around and got behind a chair, peeked around the side while my mother was talking. So she said something there that put the fear of the Lord in us. And today my nephew is a preacher, and has been preaching for a long time. And all of our family was introduced to the gospel in this way. That was as negative as you can get. And that, in my opinion, is the gospel of fear, which I don't recommend, but yet, like I said a while ago, there's something that's sustaining about it. It probably kept us faithful during those and over those dangerous years that teenagers will go through until, well, it would be perfect if at a later time we could learn about the gospel of love. And in my case, it happened. It took a long time. I might mention that my father was a preacher. Not that it was all that much of an asset, I don't think. You know what they say about preachers' children. Which reminded me that someone asked 4E Wallace one time, why was it that preachers' children were meaner than any other? And he shot back, because they run to the elders' children. There may be something to that, I don't know. But my father, I guess, is the one who set the example in our family, but my mother really done the teaching. When at a young age, an impressionable age, and this, I believe, is what sustained us all. And but later on, I learned about the gospel of grace, the gospel of love. I learned about grace and justification, righteousness of God. Before this, I was burdened with sin. I was burdened with the doubt that maybe I wasn't good enough to be saved. And I think everyone who was born into families or into the church who have that concept of Christianity, they too have doubts. And it is not a good feeling. There's no gospel there. It is in the sense of good news. Because you live a life without the joy, the feeling of joy of what it means to be a Christian. And that was the case in my case, and it is still the case with most of my brethren. I haven't been able to get them out of it. My brothers, physical brothers, and one sister. And they think I'm the heretic in the family because I have finally come to understand what it means to be saved by grace. I have this feeling that you're going to be saved because you were good enough to be saved. That you've done enough works to be saved. And I never felt that I had done enough good works to be saved. And there was always that doubt. And I began to study the book of Romans and reading from other writers, from preachers and writers from other churches, and finally began to understand what it means to be saved by grace. It is God doesn't look upon me and say, I'm going to save you because you're good enough to be saved. But I'm going to save you because Jesus is good enough for you. He is your salvation. If you want to be perfect, you're going to have to use the cloak of Jesus' righteousness in order for you to be saved. That is good news. Amen. That is the greatest news. You want to go out and tell everybody about it. And in one way or another, I've been telling it ever since I learned that for myself. And I think I've been able to teach some others also what it means to be saved by the righteousness of God. And that, Brother Gibbon, is what the effect of the truth of God has had on my life. It comes a little later on, rather than the first time I was baptized. I was baptized when I was 11 years old. So the good news was kind of late coming to me, but it finally came, and it was worth the wait.